To you, O sun, the people of Rhodes raised this statue to high heavens. After having laid to rest the waves of war, we have crowned our country with the spoils of our enemies. This beautiful dedication was inscribed on the thick bronze skin of one of the wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes. Standing at the entrance of the harbor of Rhodes, it was the tallest statue ever built in antiquity, rising to an incredible 33 meters. Sadly, it stood for only 54 years before collapsing on an earthquake. It must have been such an amazing feat of architecture that, even in its fallen state, it attracted people from all over the Mediterranean world, with many of our records talking about how incredible it was, when it was already on the floor. And well, since it collapsed so long ago, we don't know exactly what it looked like. But perhaps the coins of Rhodes, which featured the portrait of the sun god Helios, can give us a clue. Today we're taking a look at some of these coins and seeing if their portraits might hint at what the Colossus, or at least his face, looked like. So let's get started. So I think it's better if we get some historical context first. The island of Rhodes sits at the southeast end of the Aegean Sea. Around the year 408 BC, the cities of Ialisos, Camiros, and Lindos joined their populations and founded the new polis of Rhodes. The island was located at a strategic point between the trade routes that connected the Black Sea, the Greek islands, the Eastern Mediterranean, and Egypt. So basically, Rhodes was in a very privileged position for commerce. Later Greek and Roman records praised the city for its urban planning, a very well-developed sewage and water collection systems, a well-maintained fleet that kept the region mostly free of pirates, and its remarkably competent administration, which might explain how a city-state that didn't rank amongst the largest in population and with a fairly small zone of political influence, managed to keep its independence and remain as an important international point for commerce for so many centuries, at least throughout the classical and Hellenistic periods. The story of the origins of the Colossus is related to an episode that represents probably the single largest existential threat to Rhodes. In 305 BC, Antigonos Monophthalmos, king of Macedon and one of the successors of Alexander the Great, he sent his son, Demetrius Poliorcetes, with 200 war galleys and 1,000 mercenary vessels of various sizes to take Rhodes. Demetrius was famous amongst Greeks as a great city taker. His engineers built massive battering rams and 6-story tall siege towers that could flood Rhodes' walls with soldiers. Inside the walls stood at the most 7,000 guards, but the Rhodians managed to mount a stern defense and keep their supply lines open so they could hold out this siege nearly indefinitely. After a year of frustrated attempts, the morale of the famous besieger and his troops finally faltered. Demetrius was forced to negotiate a truce, leaving all of his expensive siege equipment to be reclaimed by the Rhodians. Tons upon tons of bronze, copper, iron, and other materials. The value of this bronze and iron was a lot. It was worth roughly 300 talents of silver, nearly 8 tons of the metal. If we were to make an equivalent in today's money, it was something in the realm of like hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, comparisons like that are hard to make and are bound to be inaccurate to some extent, but the point I want to send across is that it was a very substantial loot. And the city's assembly voted to thank Helios, the patron god of the city, with a monument to their victory, a statue made out of the materials from the vanquished besiegers. But not just any statue, a very big statue. Work began around 292 BC on a marble plinth beside the entrance of the main harbor. Sadly, here we need to dismantle the myth that the statue stood at this awesome pose where it straddles the entrance of the harbor with each foot at one side of its entrance and its body hanging over the water. A straddling pose was structurally unstable. It would have snapped due to the statue's own weight, and no ancient texts actually claim the Colossus was built in such a pose. It was probably just a structure at one side of the harbor with its 2 feet firmly planted at this marble plinth. To explain how the Colossus was built in broad strokes, the captured iron and wood were used to make this scaffolding around the future structure, and then iron was used to make a skeleton structure, in which sheets of bronze with the shape of Helios's body were added like a cladding to this iron structure. As the feet and the legs were made and the structure rose higher and higher, rocks were also thrown into the void spaces of the Colossus, especially around the area of the feet and the legs, to stabilize the structure, to give it some weight and lower its center of gravity. And then they just kept building higher and higher until they completed the structure. The construction took 12 years. So in 280 BC, the last bronze sheets were put into place and the scaffolding was removed, revealing a standing helios roughly 33 meters tall, about the same as a 10-story building today. There are a few standard poses Helios is typically depicted in art, and I personally think the most likely one was that where the god is standing. It is shown completely nude, with a cape over his shoulders, falling down one of his arms, with one hand raised and extended towards the east, saluting the sun as it rises up over the horizon. Another mandatory feature of Helios are the sun rays coming out of the back of his head. Now, how about the most recognizable feature of him, his face? I mean, we can't really theorize about his body since so little evidence has reached us, but as for his face, that's where numismatic evidence might give us stronger clues, not only because these coins were contemporaries to the Colossus, but also because they show certain repeating features in different coin issues, which might indicate the actual face of the Colossus was used as a reference for the coins. And this week's episode is kindly sponsored by L5, the new online marketplace for ancient coins. L5 is a platform that focuses on trust, transparency, and low fees. It is an environment where you can safely buy coins to add to your collection, knowing every item listed has been vetted by specialists, with a lifetime guarantee of authenticity, and the new system of online bidding that ensures fair, transparent bidding. No sniping, no shield bids, just a fair trading environment for buyers and sellers. L5's proposal is to eliminate all uncertainties beginners and experienced collectors alike might have when buying a coin, while offering a low-cost service with no listing fees and a buyer's premium of just 5%. Make sure to check out L5.com for what I believe is a new platform that the ancient coin market was in need for. So let's start with this amazing D drachma issued between 250 and 229 BC. This coin was made while the Colossus was either still standing or shortly after its collapse, so we know the engravers could have just look out their window and they could see the massive statue to get a reference as to what to put on the portrait of the coin. Here we see they went with a 3/4 facing portrait. That's a fairly hard type of portrait to achieve in these dies. It was much more labor intensive. The dies had to be very deeply sculpted. These coins have crazy relief. It was hard to nail down the proportions of the human face in this position, and of course there was the risk of you engraving a very deep, laborious die only to throw it away because when it was time to test it, the proportions ended up looking weird and it just failed quality control. Basically, facing portraits are much harder to make, but since coins were one of the main ways of spreading the propaganda of how prosperous your city-state was, Rhodes certainly would have had an interest of making impressive coins, calling foreigners' attentions to their coins and to the face of their colossus. That's why I personally think these portraits of Helios here in the coins, they have to be representative of what the face of the Colossus looked like. It just wouldn't make sense to go through years of work to make such a wonderful statue and then not exploiting its wonderful appearance for propagandistic reasons. The facial expression of Helios is quite interesting as well. It reminds me of some portraits of Alexander the Great and of other Hellenistic kings. There's this serene expression, eyes wide open, looking slightly up with like this slightly open mouth, like just a little bit, as if receiving some sort of inspiration from the divine, from heavens. We also see his long flocks of hair are kind of like swept back, like if a breeze was hitting Helios's face. That's a nice touch which might have been featured in the original statue, as the wind blowing from the east helped the ships enter the harbor of Rhodes, and this might have been a stylistic choice when making the statue. On the reverse, we have what is called a talking type. Some people also call it a singing type. It means that it has some sort of design element that, when named, spells out the message it is supposed to pass. It's a little bit of a pun. I mean, let me explain this better. In Greek, the name of the city, Rhodos, means rose. So yeah, the name of the island and the city was Rose. And at the reverse we have, well, the image of a rose instead of the name Rhodos spelled out. To the left and the right of the flower, we have the letters Rho and Omicron, so the first letters of Rhodos, but most of the talking is done by this gorgeous rose that dominates the central part of the design. Over it, we have the name of the magistrate responsible for this issue of the coin. These magistracies were temporary, so you have a series of different names featured here. In the case of our coin, it was issued under the supervision of a man called Timotheus. Another popular silver piece issued by Rhodes are the later drachma with the side portrait of Helios. This example was kindly filmed by the connoisseur, friend of the channel. These were issued after the collapse of the Colossus, probably some 40, 50, 60 years after its fall, but they still retain a very good visual consistency if compared to the previous coin. It's just that now they come with this much easier to make side profile. Considering how common these later issues are, I would guess that this stylistic choice was made as a matter of practicality. So more coins could be made. This was an easier portrait to make. So as we can see, it's the same as the previous coin. We have the image of the sun god gazing upwards with its long hair blown back with the wind, and the sun rays coming out of his head like a crown. Going to the reverse, we have a similar formula to the previous coin. A square border that limits the design, a rose filling the central area, the name of the magistrate at the top, in this case a man called Anaxidotos, and under the rose, the abbreviation Rho of Rhodos. And to its left, a small omphalos, the mythological navel of the world, and a little serpent. This was a control mark. These were added to the coin to show which issue this coin belongs to. Different issues had different symbols, and these were most likely connected to the magistrates that issued the coins. So as the name of the magistrate changed, so did this little mint mark. A massive earthquake in 226 BC snapped the Colossus at the knees and dropped it across the harbor. Ptolemy III of Egypt, an ally of Rhodes, offered funds to restore the statue, but the Rhodians, thinking the collapse might have been a sign that Helios was angry at them, they consulted the Oracle of Delphi first. The Oracle confirmed that Helios himself had brought the statue down and would be very angry if the Rhodians raised the statue again, so the fragments were left in place. For the next 8 centuries, the fallen giant became pretty much an open-air museum. Visitors would be amazed to hear their echoes when they screamed inside the massive hollowed arms and legs. Sadly, the Colossus finally found its end in the 7th century AD, when the Arabs occupied the island. The remaining bronze was cut up into pieces and sold to a Syrian merchant who, according to chronicles, needed 900 camels to haul the rest of the bronze away. And that was the end of the Great Colossus. But hey, at least we still have its coins to tell us about what it looked like. So I hope you enjoyed this little episode. Consider liking and subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.